Hello everybody, this is Neo Reality Entertainment. Now, I wanted to try something different. Now, this can be considered an extension of the Thoughts series, the Our Thoughts series, and the Neo Reality podcast. And this is called Neo Reality Writes. Now, if you have seen my two podcast episodes, you'll notice that I dabble in some writing, and including my fanfiction site is my fanfiction.net account is in the description of my channel about page, and I have dabbled in some fan fictions, and I like to write. I've been writing since middle school. I can't help but write. Now, this is talking about a character I came up with when I was in a pretty bad place. In fact, the whole story, my whole idea for writing came from this bad place, as I mentioned in the HF podcast. That I was in a pretty bad place. I had negative thoughts on the world, and I felt like something needed to be done, and I was so angry, I was so frustrated that I needed to vent it out somewhere, and along and behold, the character Emperor Eric was created. Now, Emperor Eric was initially penned as a straight up bad guy, because I like to be the bad guy as I've seen on WWE programming. And one of the key components of this character was the fact that he was hating the world the way it was, and it wasn't like his idea was going to go ahead and feel like he's going to destroy the world to fix the world. No, his way of doing things was a little bit different. He was going to wipe out the human race, and then when the time came, he would use the Dragon Balls that he would know, that since he had the ability to travel to different universes, to resurrect all the good people of society and build up this utopian world he wants to create. Yeah. So, yeah, initially, like I said, I wanted him to be a straight up bad guy, but as years went by, I started thinking more about, I want to add complexity to this character. So I did as many things as I could, make him more shade of gray, not that one, add in some new character development for him, and also gave him a love interest, which I will not mention the name for a variety of reasons. Let's just say it's based off of someone I was crushing on for years. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, back to Emperor Eric. There were a lot of things I wanted to come up with, like a complete philosophical deconstruction type character who would deconstruct a lot of franchises, because like me, I have questions about certain things. And Book 2, The Great Universal War, Book 1, I don't like talking about that one because I hated what I written in there. I know this is regarding my main character, but I really hated my Book 1 introduction, my first ever novel I wrote. I seriously do hate it, mostly because it was just out of control, no idea what was going on. The plots were just blowing itself up in the face, and there were so many plot holes, and so many conveniences. And I get that it has to be some form of convenience in the writing and in all forms of media, but the way it was being presented, certain characters didn't act the way they did and whatnot. So when I started writing Book 2, I ran into this big roadblock regarding everything, and I had big plans for later on, but with this roadblock I couldn't push forward. So I decided to scrap everything I wrote in Book 1, revamp it later on, rewrite it all way later on, but I wanted to do Book 2 because I had so many good ideas coming on into my head, and revamp that. So I started writing an outline. I've right now finished, this might be a series of videos regarding the Emperor Eric character, since I can't talk about him in a completely different way. But yeah, there was a lot of complexities I wanted to add to my character, such as his friendships, his bonds with other characters, his love interest, who's on the other side of war. And no, it does not end tragically like Romeo and Juliet. In fact, that's not even how it happens. They were close friends for years, and then when Eric disappeared, or to make people's eyes ran away, she was concerned. They were just friends. There was nothing going on between them except he liked her and whatnot. And yeah, I also wanted to get this vibe that there's a sense of humanity still left in the character of Emperor Eric. Like, initially he was called Lord Eric, but I wanted to like wait until I feel like it was worthy for him to earn the Emperor title. Mostly because I felt like him conquering so many universes and worlds would count as a way to declare himself Emperor. And one of my favorite aspects of the character isn't even his complex love interest, it's his friendship. Because during his time when he had disappeared, he actually spent God knows how many years, like I could go for an infinite amount, in the multiverses, where he traveled to different universes, studied, trained, and learned out of these characters from stories, from media, from all types of things. Like, he studied under Darth Malak, he learned from the Jedi Order, he learned from Thrawn about military warfare and strategic alliances, and also strategy. And then he starts to notice, and then he has a friendship during his time in the Jedi Order eras. During the Clone Wars specifically, he develops a friendship with Ahsoka Tano, because he goes ahead and says in one point when Eric is introducing Naruto to Ahsoka, even though they're enemies, saying like, "This is Naruto, an old friend. This is Ahsoka, the sister I always wanted." Yeah, that's what he said, and I thought it'd be interesting that Emperor Eric looks at Ahsoka like a sister to him, because he doesn't have a sister. Like, I do have a sister in real life, but when I was writing all this stuff, when I was coming up with ideas, she wasn't born yet. And I really don't want to put her in the story because I think it'd be too dark and too violent and really messed up. Considering that Emperor Eric is on basically a huge killing spree and wiping out humanity off the face of the multiverse to try and cleanse it. And plus, it wouldn't make sense for his mother to go ahead and have a child when she's all depressed over the fact that her son's gone. So why would she have a child during a depression stage like this for years and years? Yeah, I try to reason how this would not make sense to me. So, yeah, anyways, his friendship with Ahsoka Tano, it comes to a head like, there's a reason why a lot of characters don't have memories of Eric, like, even though he's interacted with them before this whole Great Universal War campaign he did. It's because, strictly speaking, he found a way to erase everybody's memories. If he left to a different universe, their memories would be erased until the time was right. And he would give special symbols out to certain people for him to be able to remember him even after he had left. So I decided that later on Ahsoka would regain the memories after this great merging process that happens, and goes ahead and has this bond with Eric and tries to see if she can try to save him from himself, but that doesn't work out. And then Eric tries to get her to join this initiative called The Truth, where he's basically trying to destroy the fundamental basics of the Jedi Order and the Sith, because, yeah, if you've seen my videos, you've known I've been very critical about the Jedi and the Sith. Speaking of the Jedi, like, seriously, they torture their Padawans. I know I mentioned this in the second episode of my podcast, but come on, man, that's just messed up. Yeah, at least the Sith are more honest about their psychotic urges. So, yeah. So it starts to blur this line of good and evil. Like I wasn't going, like, I said, like, he was supposed to be a straight up villain, but then I thought, nah, like, I wanted to do, like, he acts like a villain in book 1, and then starts to slowly show more layers to him later on as time went on, to show that there's a reason why he acts this way, there's a reason why he does these things. And his one reason is the fact that, well, it's kind of in my opinion, a possible real life thing, is we're stubborn. Our species is very, very stubborn when it comes to trying to find another way. And nowadays, common sense isn't really so common. And plus, when there's conflict, people get to leech off of it when times come and profit off of it. Yeah, so Emperor Eric is part of this grand lineage called the Showalter family. Like, there's a reason why he's not called Eric Showalter. He's not called that because because he has my last name, since he's based off of a more darker version of me when I was in this bad place. Is because he was descendant from Showalter families who had some form of relations with some very noteworthy people throughout history, like President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which was awesome, Charles the Great, or Charlemagne as he's known, William the Conqueror, Robert E. Lee, James Madison, and the kings of England, King Henry the First through Third, and maybe the others, but that's beside the point. And this started getting me thinking, like, how about we do this big, elaborate conspiracy family dynasty where they try to enforce this era of peace through fear by showing humanity their brutality had grown to exponential levels, that the atomic bomb was supposed to be the icing on the cake to show, see, this is what you've done, humanity. This is all because of your aggression. And would scare humanity into peace, which almost worked and failed miserably. After FDR died, the plan fell apart because humanity did not sway from the path of war and chaos. So the fallout plan, when Eric discovered this, is to start up the Great Earth War, which involves wiping out all of humanity, or as much as humanly possible. And then would later go ahead and do an initiative called the Utopian Initiative, which basically resurrects everybody who had pure hearts and was loyal to each other and cared for each other, would be resurrected with the Dragon Balls, because it'd be hard to try and differentiate what was good and what was bad, especially when they're working together against a common enemy. And eventually, Eric would create these devices that involve detailing who was good and who was committing crimes and whatnot, and see if they were telling the truth or not. So basically, I'm borrowing stuff from Judge Dredd, I think. And I've never watched that movie. I've seen the Nostalgia Critic review. And there's another reason why I've written him in a very psychopathic way. Like, there are a lot of times he acts psychotic, he acts humorous. The psychotic reason is because later on I started incorporating this idea of gods and deities and goddesses called the Universalist, which is basically cramming every single religion into one unified ideology. Yeah, I might piss people off for that. And the Universalists are people who are in charge of the multiverses, and I'll get to that when I get to that in a later episode. But back to Emperor Eric, he's also kind of a Jinchuriki, like from Naruto, where he has the embodiment of hate, the embodiment of all things that are hateful in the multiverses, and it starts to slowly influence his actions and personality, amplifies his negativity, and showing off this psychotic urge. So he initially had planned, if he had somehow won the Great Universal War, he probably would have killed himself. Maybe. I don't know. Or found a way to expunge the darkness in him. So the Truth Initiative for him and Ahsoka, back to that since I went off track, but still kind of related to the subject, goes ahead and starts to try and recruit Ahsoka, and he eventually finds a way to break her to join the Truth. And she eventually does join, and she gets to air out her grievances, especially towards the Jedi Order for a number of reasons, because this was actually your great trial, BS. Yeah, this was also me trying to deconstruct Star Wars' Jedi Orders, except for the new Jedi Order. They're alright. But he still has a war with them. But yeah, this is my way of saying, like, yeah, if I was in the Star Wars galaxy, I would do something regarding the Jedi Order. I don't care about the Republic. They're a government. They have no dealing with the Jedi in terms of an allegiance towards each other. But I would try my damnedest to get the Jedi Order to think straight and not be hypocritical liars. And also, like, I wanted to also plan out a storyline with him and Ahsoka to eventually culminate, because I mentioned this in the first episode. He's also a wrestler. I've incorporated wrestling into my story by a lot. And oh man. I'll talk about that way later, why I felt like putting wrestling into my story. But it most likely will stem from the fact that I'm a huge pro wrestling fan and sports entertainment fan, according to Vince. Yeah, I can't help myself, especially when it comes to certain characters from the wrestling world that I decide to incorporate into my story, but have much bigger roles than just being a wrestler or a character on television or sports entertainer. So yeah, this is to culminate between Lord Eric and Ahsoka inside Hell in a Cell. It's supposed to be an emotional breaking of the bonds between them, and it ends with Eric getting the victory. And yeah, I go crazy with these ideas, like, yeah. And that was 2013 to 2015. 2014, okay, that's more like a blank period that I'm coming up with. Like he has this war going on, and he's also doing comedic stuff at times. Like, his culmination period regarding 2014 is the Shinobi Showalter connection, which is basically ripping off the Rock and Sock connection with Naruto and Lord Eric as a tag team. Oh boy, some people are going to say my story's stupid, but it's my story. It's a passion project. I don't care. And also Ahsoka is part of the team, and they essentially, when Eric and Naruto team up, and there's a reason why Naruto and Ahsoka are teaming up with Eric in this whole storyline here, because Eric said this: if you do this for this amount of time, I'll put my war on hold. You guys can rebuild and have enough resources to combat us. Now, granted, that sounds like the stupidest convenient way possible, but I'm trying to make Emperor Eric an unorthodox villain. Like, he's not your standard villain, and trying to make him more unorthodox than the usual unorthodox villains, and show this tragic sense of him later on, especially when I wrote a scene where he kills his best friend in a accidental, brutal way possible. I'll just say he uses an assassin blade that pierces through his neck. Yeah. Though, of course, at the same time, it wasn't kind of his fault when that happened. Like, he tries to kill him, but with his friend trying to reason with him, he starts to lessen his aggression, and then his love interest shoots his arm, and his arm jerks forward and pierces his neck, his friend's neck, and he dies. So I wanted to also present a what-if scenario, like, what if she had not made that shot at him? So, yeah. And along with that, I also wanted to show more of this embodiment of hate. Like, he has this mark around that later forms on the side of his face, which symbolizes the mark of hate. The trailer develops into the mask of hate. And I'll talk about the Universalist at a later date. Now, the Emperor Eric episodic thing is going to be in various parts, because I don't know if I could talk about him in complete extensive detail in one video, because, okay, let's be honest, that's going to be impossible, since plans change. So these all ideas could change, but some are set in stone, some are not. And I also will be talking about certain characters from the other universes, because my ideas are very expansive. Like, oh god, I cannot believe how crazy creative I can be when it comes to writing ideas. Now, writing them, coming up with ideas, that's the one thing. Visualizing it, that's another. And finally, writing it down on paper, okay, that's a whole nother animal. So, yeah. I want Emperor Eric to be a tragic character. Like, I've shown this to David Davis and HF Hoofhammer on fanfiction.net. Like, David Davis says that he needs to be stopped. He's a complete psychotic madman. He needs to be put down. But he also agrees he has a tragic backstory. And HF kind of sees him like he's trying to be the main protagonist, and he has somewhat good reasons why he feels the way he feels. But also believes that he needs to be stopped and the way he's going about it is wrong. But you kind of understand why he feels like he has no choice in the matter because, well, society kind of pushed him over the edge. Yeah. So this was part 1 of a possibly long episodic series of Neo-Reality Rights regarding Emperor Eric. This was Neo-Reality Entertainment. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. Stay tuned for more.